to go to make their visit to St. Thomas. So let's see how that goes. On Saturday morning, John was out of bed and heading through the door by 7 a.m., which earned him a surprise, "Is where you off to so early?" from Carol. "This is not like you at all." John made some excuse involving his usual alibi in these situations. Last-minute fishing trip off Lime Key with Brian and the other members of his crew, and fled. With Peter Tosh's down-presser man blasting through the speakers, he fairly zoomed down the steep, treacherous hill, detoured left up Red Hills Road, into Meadowbrook, and headed up to East Greathouse Circle in Havendale to pick up Brian. As he settled into the front passenger seat, Brian turned to his friend and asked him if he really still wanted to go through with it. He may as well have saved his breath, as John just gave him a look, and off they went. It was a beautiful Caribbean morning, blue skies, bright sunshine, and relatively light traffic. A perfect day for a drive. They had arranged to meet Brian's friend Bonnie in Bull Bay, and this they did after a quick stop at Juicy Beef Patties for some breakfast of hominy corn soup, hominy corn porridge rather, callaloo and saltfish, flour dumplings, and some boiled green bananas. They picked Bonnie up in Bull Bay Square, and after he got into the back seat, Brian made the introductions. As he drove, John studied him through the rear-view mirror. Bonnie appeared to be an interesting character. For one thing, he was dressed somewhat strangely. He wore a kind of robe that stretched down to his knees, adorned with bits of mirrors. His feet were shod with rough-hewn leather sandals. He also carried a gnarly, twisted rod with a curved head, which had the smooth finish of driftwood. "So John," Bonnie began, "why you want to visit us here? Is what kind of problem you having? Everything not all right at home? Your wife giving you a problem?" "No man, not like that." "So Brian never tell you what happened?" "No, him say you would explain everything." So John did. When he mentioned the forest shape, Bonnie inhaled sharply and kissed his teeth. John, alarmed, asked him why he reacted in the way that he did. But Bonnie only said, "It's a serious thing. Drive up." Brian looked from one to the other of them with a skeptical yet intrigued expression, but did not comment. Bonnie gave directions to a small village on the outskirts of the parish capital, Morant Bay, and to a compound that nestled just off a quiet road at the bottom of a hill. As they approached the compound, they could see several tall bamboo poles flying makeshift flags of different colors fluttering in the light breeze. These were visible as they projected above the perimeter fencing, made of interwoven bamboo strips topped with a couple of strands of barbed wire. At regular points atop the enclosure, there were some soda bottles filled with what appeared to be water glinting in the bright sunshine when the sun's rays struck them at an angle. There were also bits of broken mirror glass adorning the walls, plus other objects that they could not identify. They could also hear some rhythmic drumming and chanting as they got closer. "Last chance," Brian said warningly to John in a low voice. "No worries, man," John answered lightly, even as he privately began to ask himself exactly what the hell he was doing. But he squashed those thoughts immediately. "Go round little and drive in," said Bonnie. Of course, it is worth mentioning that John knew as much about Obeah as he knew about flying jumbo jets or designing buildings. That is, pretty much nothing at all. Oh sure, like most Jamaicans, he was familiar in general terms with Obeah as an aspect of Jamaican culture. But in specific terms, he had not a clue. So as he drove through the gates to the compound, he had absolutely no idea what to expect. John parked the car under a large mango tree and the three men got out. John looked around curiously. The chanting and drumming had been coming, apparently, from a group of mostly older people gathered under another mango tree in the yard. They were all dressed in white, and the women in the group wore headscarves tied like turbans around their heads. Three men played drums, and everyone swayed as they sang and chanted well-known spirituals, hymns, and choruses. The yard itself was wide and spacious. In addition to the mango trees, there were a few other trees and shrubs around as well, all of which sported some kind of adornment. John's eyes, however, were drawn to the center of the compound, where there was a large, low, square concrete platform with what looked like an altar in the middle. The platform had colored flags, blue, white, red, on bamboo poles at each corner. He and the others walked towards the platform, on which stood a man dressed, like the singers, in snowy white. He, however, boasted a very large turban on his head, tied at the front with a large, intricate knot. A couple of pencils were shoved up under the turban by his ears. The man had a welcoming expression on his face, and he radiated an aura of kindness mixed with mystery. "Welcome to Gilead, John Alexander," the man said. And to Brian, "It is good to see you, Mr. Rodney. I know your mother, but it years I don't see you." To Bonnie, he just nodded familiarly. Bonnie responded with a simple, "Greetings, elder." "How did he know my name?" John answered. John wondered. And his confusion was reflected in the astonishment on Brian's face. He was clearly as surprised as John was that the man seemed to know who they were, while they were absolutely certain that they had never met him before. Things had got off to a strange start indeed. "I am Brother Dalton," the man continued in his deep, melodious voice. "You have come to me looking for help, John. Come and tell me what the problem is, and let us see if I can help you. Mr. Rodney, you can wait out here." Brother Dalton guided John into the living room of a small house at the rear of the compound. The room was surprisingly comfortable. On a small end table was the largest Bible John had ever seen. It was enormous, like you had to use both hands and strain to lift it up. Beside the Bible, the flame of a thick white candle flickered slightly as a tendril of breeze came through the window. "Have a seat. You want something to drink? It's a long drive from Kingston and you're most thirsty. Just some water, please." "Okay, so what's happening to you? Tell me everything. Not leave out nothing." John related the story of what had been happening, and like Bonnie had, at the mention of the furry humanoid form that he caught fleeting glimpses of in his nightmares, Brother Dalton sucked air into his mouth sharply. "Brother Dalton, what do you know about this? You can't help me?" John asked. The white-clad priest was quiet for a while, then, before answering John's question, asked a question of his own. "John, anybody dead for you? Anybody close, like, say, a child?" John was in complete shock. He had never told another soul, not even Brian, about what had happened to him 5 years previously. It had happened a mere few months after he and Carol had got married. He had met this very attractive go-go dancer at a club on Constant Spring Road. One thing had led to another, and she had got pregnant. And even though Sandra had wanted to keep the child, John had been adamant that she had to have an abortion. She had hated to do it and cursed him bitterly. But he was adamant. He paid for the procedure and made sure she was comfortable, at least physically. It had been a moment of madness that he regretted deeply and always would. That he had been faithful to Carol ever since was small comfort to him, and the painful incident had formed a knot of pain that he had buried deep within himself. "John, the child does not rest quietly. His spirit is displeased, and he cannot go forward on its journey." The child had, in fact, been a boy. "He is angry, John, at what you did to him, and that is why he is coming to you in your dreams." John was stunned, but in a strange way he was not surprised. Tears started to flow down his cheeks as he relived the experience in his mind. The anguished, shattered look on Sandra's face as she turned away from him in her hospital bed after the deed had been done, and her refusal to look at him thereafter. She had developed feelings for him, and he had hurt her badly. She had cursed him too, using as many choice Jamaican swear words as there were in the country's rich lexicon, and she had declared that his life would be filled with misery thereafter, filled with as much misery as he had given her. John, haltingly, like he was speaking from the bottom of a deep well, told Brother Dalton the story of what had happened. Brother Dalton did not interrupt. He just nodded at points and made sounds of understanding and encouragement, as the whole sordid story was vomited up from within John in cathartic clumps. When he was finished, Brother Dalton told John that he was glad John had come to him. It's a bad business, but I think I can help you. We need to help your child to find his way and to leave you alone. And you're going to have to tell your wife as well. But meantime, wait here. I have to make some preparations. With that, he left the room and left John with his thoughts. John didn't even know where Sandra was these days. She had quit the club and seemingly vanished. Calls to her cell phone had not been returned and the number had later been changed. Not for the first time, he tried to reassure himself that he had made the right decision at the time. But now, for once, he was not so sure. After about half an hour, one of the white-clad women came to get him. She gave him a simple white shift and told him to change into it. She then took him out to the concrete square, which was indeed an altar. There was now a large wooden tub in front of the raised section of the altar, and as he came closer to the tub, he saw some bushes floating in it. The water was already tinged green. He recognized some of the bushes: fever grass, cerasee, loveweed. The others he could not identify. The group of disciples, which is what they were, encircled the tub and the altar. Brother Dalton had added a large gold crucifix to his outfit. He stood in front of the altar with his arms raised and appeared to be praying. The drumming had gotten louder and more animated, and the disciples were singing and chanting with more fervor. The woman led John up to the tub and indicated that he should get in. She then joined the circle. With his head spinning from the experience, John nevertheless got into the tub and sat down. The warm water rose up to his chest. Above him, Brother Dalton's voice rang out, uttering words and phrases in a tongue that John did not recognize. As the chanting and drumming rose in intensity, Dalton placed his left hand on John's head and raised his right hand to the sky. "Father God, this is your son John. He has done a terrible thing and now he needs forgiveness, Lord." His voice rang out. "Give rest to his unborn child and lead the Spirit forward into mercy, Lord." Brother Dalton carried on in that vein for some time, periodically dipping John's head below the water's surface and pouring some over his head with a plastic jug. Across the yard, Brian was leaning against the car, taking it all in. He did not understand what was happening and had a million questions that he wanted answers to, not the least of which related to this child that he had never heard of. As far as he knew, John and Carol did not have any kids and had not had any in the past, though they intended to at some point. Whether it was just in his mind or whether something had actually happened, he did not know. But John started to feel lighter, more calm and at peace than he had felt in years, in 5 years in fact. As he apparently was nearing the end of his peroration, Dalton, assisted by 2 of the men, lifted John to his feet and out of the tub and stood him before the altar. Brother Dalton anointed him with some slightly unpleasant smelling substance and twirled him around 6 times, 3 clockwise, 3 anti-clockwise. By this time the drumming and chanting had reached fever pitch, and as he looked on, Brian could not be sure, but he could have sworn he had seen something rise toward the sky. Maybe just some steam, he thought, but he could not be 100% sure. One more piece to go.